Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We bring you analysis for fact and bias. We point out each. We bring you commentary, not news. That's opinion. It's debatable. And we bring you debate. A couple of different ways to do it. All you got to do is head over to the chat room at your nearby streaming service that you may be watching this broadcast on, which I hope you are. Of course, it would be silly for me to bring that up, because there's only one way for you to actually see this broadcast, and that's if you are actually seeing this broadcast. So that was maybe a silly remark. Okay, so that being said, welcome to the Wells Report. It's Monday. My wife had the quote of the weekend yesterday. She goes, "Weekends are just too short." You know, that's one of those things that I'm looking forward to. When the 4-day work week comes, I'm looking for the extra day. How about you? So we are going to bring you the news. By the way, you can contact us for the debate portion of this broadcast by calling 817-379-2172. That's 817-379-2172. Do it. Do it now. By the way, winning the not Facebook, but the chat room derby today is Yvonne Field. Brian Smith is saying hello. Well, hello, Brian. Good to have you back, man. How have you been? Hi, Jesse. Good to see you. She was up at 5 o'clock this morning. And texting. I'm sitting there going, what? So this is a long time coming, and I'm glad to be able to report this to you. Dr. Anthony Fauci is departing his roles as the national director or the director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and the chief medical officer to President Joe Biden at the end of this year, marking the end of nearly 4 decades as the nation's top infectious disease expert. Here's the statement, quote, "I am announcing today I will be stepping down from the positions of Director of National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the Chief of the NIAID, which is the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He's going to disappear from the immunoregulation department, as well as the position of chief medical advisor to President Joe Biden. I will be leaving these positions in December of this year to pursue the next chapter of my career." He's 81. He served at the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases for 38 years, starting in the former President Ronald Reagan's administration, a role in which he helped lead the U.S. response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic, as well as the West Nile virus, anthrax attacks, pandemic influenza, various bird influenza threats, Ebola, and Zika. He became one of the most public faces of the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. President Biden praised Fauci's work in a statement, noting that his unwavering commitment to the work, as well as his unparalleled spirit, energy, and scientific integrity. Do you agree? Do you agree with any of those statements? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Also, you can contact us via the chat. All right? Whether you met him personally or not, he has touched all Americans' lives with his work. That's an understatement. I extend my deepest thanks for his public service. The United States of America is stronger, more resilient, and healthier because of him. Do you believe that? 817-379-2172. Fauci said in his statement that he is not retiring, will continue to advance science and public health and to inspire and mentor the next generation of scientific leaders as they help prepare the world to face future infectious disease threats. Fauci and then President Donald Trump publicly disagreed on how to approach the pandemic, what the correct message was for the American people, and how to balance reopening with preventing further contagion. Through it all, President Trump insisted he respected Fauci but disagreed with his approach. As we have seen the fruits of Dr. Fauci's approach, do you think that maybe President Trump might have had a pretty good argument? Again, just asking. Did President Trump have a better argument than Anthony Fauci or not, and why? In 2020, by the way, during their relationship's low point, President Trump suggested he was considering firing the doctor. That might have been the best move for all of us. Anyway, in 2020, Fauci told Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN he had to get security protection after his family received death threats and harassment. Fauci told CNN last month political pressures did not play into his decision to eventually leave his role. It has nothing to do with pressures, nothing to do with all the other nonsense you hear about, or the barbs, stings, and arrows, or slings and arrows. This has no influence on me. Yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure that that's completely correct. It doesn't have any influence on you whatsoever, which is why it took you this long to quit. So there you go. Dr. Fauci is leaving. That is probably good news. What may not necessarily be good news is as follows. Health officials are banking on vaccinations to contain monkeypox and polio before those become standing threats in the U.S. They're counting on updated boosters to restore waning immunity against COVID-19. Influenza is supposed to come back this season, even though everything that was anything close to influenza was actually COVID. In other words, we had plenty of flu last year. We just didn't think it was flu, or didn't admit that it was flu. So that's all coming back. What does this mean? This means that healthcare workers are saying, okay, I've had enough, and they're walking away, but for different reasons than Anthony Fauci. Federal government will facilitate getting the inoculations to states. But it will be the 2,820 state and local health departments that will spearhead the work of getting shots into arms again. And public health experts say it's not clear that these offices have enough funding or staff to get the job done. Dr. Peggy Hamburg says, I think it's deeply worrisome, the former health commission for New York City and former commissioner for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. It's hard to imagine how state and local health departments can mobilize, and they desperately need additional support. Well, here's what you do. You make the vaccines possible, you make the vaccines available, and you stand back and let the people decide, instead of having a massive government mandate on all this. If somebody's worried about monkeypox, make sure that they have access to a vaccine and get out of their way. If they want a COVID-19 booster, make sure that they have a COVID-19 booster and get out of the way. You see, that's the way you do business here in the United States. You get out of the way. And so all of these other things are basically moot. What we have here is a big government bureaucrat talking about how, well, we have to have continued big government to continue to force all kinds of vaccines on all kinds of people. This is Dr. Peggy Hamburg, former health commissioner of New York City and former commissioner of the U.S. FDA. All she can see is a gigantic government solution. We don't have government solutions. Flu shots have been around for decades. It's real simple. Make sure that the vaccines are there. Make sure that they're safe and effective. Make sure that the American people can get access to them and get out of the way. The overriding important statement in all of that is get out of the way. After almost 3 years of contending with vaccine hesitancy, for good reason, politics, and a global pandemic, which are probably the very same thing, the nation's public health care workers are frayed and leaving their posts. More than 1 in 4 health department leaders quit their jobs during the pandemic. That's right, because politics was being forced down their throat. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were tired or burned out or any of the other stuff. It was just that they were being told to do political things in a public health environment. And they said, see ya. This is why government health care is an abomination and must be avoided at all costs. Must be avoided at all costs. Now depleted agencies are being asked to tackle new threats like monkeypox. Okay, so there are like 14,000 cases of monkeypox, okay? It is a vastly predominantly affliction that is within the adult gay community, the male gay community. If those guys need those shots, make them available, get out of the way. It's real simple. I mean, I get all kinds of shots at CVS. I get all kinds of shots at CVS. I got my last flu shot at CVS. I'm going to go back and get a pneumovax and a shingles vaccine because I had chickenpox when I was a kid. That's what I'm going to do. Well, all you got to do is make sure that the vaccines are safe and effective, FDA approved this time. By the way, you can't say that about any of the COVID-19 vaccines yet. They are not fully FDA approved. Not the vaccines, not the boosters. And by the way, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Pfizer BioNTech. They're submitting a new booster for targeting BA.5. They're looking for FDA authorization. No, they need FDA approval. Okay, we've gotten down the road enough on these things. Now it's time for FDA approval of all these things, just like every other vaccine that we have in the United States. Every single one of them. And we have to keep we have to make sure that the American, because when it gets right down to it, the American people are responsible for their own health. When there's a disease out there, very much okay, so SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, when it's out there, yes. The public health agencies in the country work to facilitate keeping people safe from that disease, vaccinating them when possible, and then keeping track of their public health information. You don't play politics and say you will have these or you will be fired. You don't play fascist games by saying, hey, you got to wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, whatever. You don't play fascist games like that. You don't shut down businesses. Sweden, for example, let the disease run its course. Now, is that something we should have done here? Well, we really don't know. We just don't know. Because of the more than 1 million American deaths of COVID-19, we're not exactly sure all of them are COVID-19. Why? Because politics became part of the public health industry in the United States. And it was just awful. And it remains awful. And we, the people, have to do better with that. And that means we have to hire people that understand how America works instead of their own political, sociopathic trends, to do whatever's necessary based on the excuse of the day. Never let a good crisis go to waste. So, once again, I've got a couple of comments on that. I've got enough time. This former FDA administrator, she's trying to keep the federal health game going. Pass. That's a hard pass. And I'm pretty sure that the public health departments around the country are going to be just fine once politics gets out of their business. Let's hope that's the case. I was talking about Pfizer BioNTech. They're going after FDA authorization, not approval, authorization for another booster shot targeting BA.5. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, talking a little bit of COVID news today. Fauci's quitting, and public health folks, according to somebody who used to run the FDA, are getting tired and burned out and leaving their jobs. Somehow I doubt that's the case, but then again, if they're forced to have federal politics shoved down their throat, they may just leave because they've had enough. Either way, I'm pretty sure that public health is getting better almost immediately, with the CDC admitting that they have blown it last week. And then Fauci leaving, and people getting the word that, yes, indeed, we are in a post-COVID political phase. In other words, politics COVID, the variant that has basically done immeasurable damage to just about everybody. Politics COVID is a past tense item. Pfizer and German partner BioNTech have submitted their new COVID-19 booster that targets Omicron subvariant by BA.5 to the Food and Drug Administration for emergency use authorization. This according to the companies in a statement today. If the vaccine is authorized, Pfizer has rapidly scaled up production to immediately begin distribution to help protect individuals and families as we prepare for potential and winter surges. This is Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla. The new boosters may be available in a few short weeks to anyone over the age of 12. This according to White House COVID coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha in an interview with NBC News. The updated booster is a bivalent vaccine containing mRNA from the original SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, which is already present in Pfizer's first COVID-19 vaccine, combined with mRNA from the spike protein of the Omicron BA.4 and BA.5 subvariant. Okay, all right, so here's what I just tweeted. All right, before we get another emergency use authorization, I want to see some FDA approvals for all the other vaccines. I mean, approvals. I want full-on approvals for all the other vaccines before any other vaccines come for emergency use authorization. The days of using the world population and the American population as lab rats is over. Enough is enough. If these vaccines are all they're supposed to be, according to the people that assure us that they are everything we expected them to be, except of course they don't work, then submit it for full approval by the FDA before we start moving down the road of approving other ones. How about that? Does that make sense to anybody but me? My telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I mean, it's been years now. Why are these still emergency use authorizations? I'll tell you why. Because it keeps big pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer BioNTech out of civil court. That's why. Now, I am reasonably sure that at some point, there's going to be some information out there that says, well, we kind of missed the boat on this COVID-19 vaccine thing. And I'm sure that that's going to get real expensive. Or at least there's going to be an attempt to make it real expensive. But all I can say is, enough is enough. Enough's enough. We've had all the emergency use authorizations we need. It's time to get full FDA approval for these things or take them away. One of the two. That's what a real public health department would do. They would say, okay, we got all this data. We've used the American people as lab rats for 2.5 years now. Let's go ahead and start doing the necessary work to get full approval from the FDA. And then, after all that paperwork is done, let's see if the FDA actually gives full approval. I wonder if they will. Something tells me they won't. Huh. Yeah, I kind of got you too, didn't it? Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Hi. It's Monday. Another work week stretching out before us where unbelievably, fantastically productive and brilliant professional endeavors among all of us will be the case and actual ideologies of the day. Okay, probably not, but why not? This could be the week that changes everything for the better this time. What are the odds? I don't know. So a little while ago, Susan bought me a James Avery crucifix ring. I like wearing rings on this pinky. I do. And we got it. It was just a little large, and I started losing weight and so on and so forth. And one day it disappeared. I still pine for that ring. I'm hoping it's somewhere in this house somewhere, in some little nook or cranny. I'm not sure it is, but I sure would like to find it because that would be a great day. So imagine what was going through a Massachusetts woman's mind when her diamond wedding ring set flew off of her finger while she was playing beach football on a beach. Francesca Tial told the Boston Globe she was tossing a football with her husband this month at North Beach in Hampton, New Hampshire, when the ring that belonged to her great-grandmother slipped off her finger. They couldn't find the ring in the water after hours of searching, and that was a pity. Anyway, they couldn't figure out what was going on. And then what ended up happening is some guy with a metal detector actually found it. She asked for help on a post on social media. It was shared thousands of times, got the attention of a guy named Lou Ossie. Ossie is 60 years old. He lives in Marshfield. He put on a wetsuit and a headlamp, went into the water looking for the ring with his metal detector. After the first 2 days he went looking, no luck. I didn't take the failure too well. I wanted to go back and give it one last shot. That's when he found the ring buried under the sandy ocean floor. He sent TL a picture, writing in a message, "Please tell me this is the ring so I can finally get off this beach." Ozzy returned the ring to TL's home, and her husband got on one knee to place it back on her finger. I've been so overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers this week. It's been so amazing to witness humanity in this positive way and has brought so much faith to myself and others. So, God bless that guy. Good for him. Well done. Outstanding. Now, if someone will please find my James Avery crucifix ring, I would be very, 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 very happy. Wanted to let you know about that. Just wanted to let you know about that because it's kind of isn't that a great story? Gary says, man, that's a great story. Sure is. Absolutely. So our schools are in vehement, if not almost unspeakable chaos. And it has to do with a lot of people in the education establishment, if not all of it. Get a load of this, being reported by Fox News. American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten admitted to sharing a false tweet claiming that certain books were banned in Florida over the weekend. Quote, "I should have double-checked before I retweeted that list. My bad. Looks like some of the books weren't banned. Book bans are very real and dangerous," she said yesterday. She included a screenshot of her original text, which said, "Books we have taught for generations." The list, posted by an account called Freeze Us Patriot, claimed that Florida has banned books such as To Kill a Mockingbird or Wrinkle in Time. The account also tweeted that they would not reveal the source of the list. I'm not going to say where this list came from due to protecting sources, but if this list is wrong, then I invite @Governor @Ron DeSantis FL to publicly state that the books on this list will not be banned in Florida, and he intends to protect student rights. I will take it down if he does. So, social media users responded to Weingarten's walk back and the original tweet, which now has been deleted. The list is fake, Randy. Note that there's no link to a source for it. Weingarten responded to Luntz saying, hey, that was Frank Luntz, by the way. You know him. You know. Anyway, Frank Luntz wrote that, and then she wrote back to him saying, we thought it was checked, my bad, and I deleted it. Weingarten was reelected to lead the AFT in July, making it her 8th term as AFT president. Weingarten responded to another tweet pointing out the list was made up and said that she should have double-checked. Yeah, you should have double-checked. It's ridiculous that you didn't, unless, of course, you're playing politics with schools. And I wonder if the American Federation of Teachers is playing politics with schools. The answer would be yes. Not just schools, but our children's lives. It's like if you can't beat them, lie. Seriously? You know, I do this show Monday through Friday between 2 and 5 Central Time. And I am basically a one-man band. I handle all this stuff myself. I have a vast staff of one, me. And yet I can double source stuff. As a matter of fact, I do. Why couldn't she? Why couldn't she just pick up the phone and call? Well, I'll tell you why. Because politics is more important than real. Politics is more important than true. Politics is more important than fair. Politics is more important than parents, and politics is more important than kids, especially when it comes to our schools. And so she jumped all over it because it satisfied her political ambitions. Not the ones that I guess she's long since abandoned, which would be her educator ambitions. This is one of the problems that we have in this nation. We are getting away from reality based on the needs of the political ideology at the time. We're simply blowing off what is real and what is true for the sake of some political delirium. And if you believe everything that you read or everything that you see, the American Federation of Teachers is nothing more than a political organization that leads teachers around by the nose. Not just teachers. The CDC. Yeah, during this COVID mess, Rachel Walensky was making sure that the teachers' unions were okay with the latest CDC proposed policy. Are you flipping nuts? The answer is no, they're not nuts. That was standard operating procedure for what, the last 2.5 years? Now, in my way of trying to be fair, I can say that, well, you know, I can't really say that. I was just going to say that that you can, it is possible to screw up and put fraudulent, or not fraudulent, but let's say errant information up on Twitter. And I was about to say that, you know what, I've done that myself, but I've not done that myself. As a matter of fact, I put a tweet up today. And I wanted to make dang sure that what it was accurate, so I double-checked it before I put it up. Had to do with another Republican senator talking about how the Republican Party is really going to do something this time, if indeed they get control over the Senate and the House. And I'm sitting there going, No, I'm pretty sure that that's garbage, because it's been garbage for the last, well, it started in 2006. No, 2004. Yeah, 2004 to 2006. Started back then. It's happened a couple of times since. Republicans are great at talking, but really, really bad at doing. So I put that out there. I wanted to make sure that this guy was a Republican. So I double-checked it. It doesn't take long. It does not take long. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to bring up a browser and I'm going to say banned book list Florida. Banned book list Florida. Banned book list Florida. What books are banned? Let's see. The titles are not To Kill a Mockingbird or any of those things. No, they're Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kolabe. All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You by Jesse Reynolds and Ibram Kendi. Lists, let's see. What else do we have here? Let me just grab onto this. This is an NBC story. Okay. Let's see. Some of the titles that appear on both lists. Let me go back to the beginning of this. Let's see. A sticker on the notice of the front inside cover of books, co-founder of Florida Freedom to Read Project, which advocates against censorship in Florida schools. Farrell said a media specialist in the school district shared photos of labels with her in June. After a series of public records requests, challenged books, and the district's creation of a committee that reviews school materials, Farrell said she received a phone call from Elizabeth Alves, Associate Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for Collier County Public Schools. Alves told her the district began adding labels in February after the district's legal representative spoke with Florida Citizens Alliance, a conservative group last year that issued a Porn in Schools report. The report included a list of books that promote gender self-identification and same-sex marriage, as well as titles that include indecent and offensive material. Let's see, it's unfortunate, blah, 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 blah. A total of 110 books feature the advisory labels. Keith Flaw, CEO and co-founder of the Florida Citizens Alliance, confirmed his group submitted a public records request about 112 novels in the district. Many contain sexually explicit and age-inappropriate content. That's not new, which he said in an email is a direct violation of the Florida laws on obscenity and the sale of harmful materials to minors. He also cited a 2017 law the group helped draft that allows parents and any residents of the state to object to instructional materials and provide evidence for why they believe that material is inappropriate. All right, so let's see. I've already talked about Gender Queer, a memoir, All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson, Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. The list also includes literary classics like Beloved by Toni Morrison, and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Also included in the public children's book, Everywhere Babies, a rhyming illustrated books about what babies do. The illustrations include what could be interpreted as a few same-sex couples, but they're never identified as such in the text. Is that really necessary? What's that old saw? Oh yeah, a picture's worth 1,000 words. These people are just intellectually dishonest. They're just dishonest. You know, it's like this. Kids grow up, and first through fifth grade, you know, it's reading and writing and arithmetic. It used to be. And then some things begin to creep in, not from the schools themselves, but into the brains of the kids because they're beginning to change. And that lasts through, let's see, it starts about sixth grade and lasts through grad school and into their 40s. Anyway, this indoctrination garbage is essentially not educating our kids except in things that most of us don't want our kids educated with or about. You know, remember, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I said sex education used to be about reproduction. Now, sex education is actually about how to have sex. It's like, seriously? And the answer is yes, seriously. Yeah. Also included in this list is the literary classic Everywhere Babies. Yeah. Well, there's a couple of same-sex couples there, but what the hell? Yeah, except, once again, it's not up to you. It's kind of sort of up to the parents now, isn't it? Now, isn't it? Yeah. It's a real good example of how extreme this is getting. Jonathan Friedman, director of free expression and education programs at Penn America, said in a telephone interview, some of the images in the books are assumed to be gay. Yeah. These warning labels are something you might see on a cigarette package. They're treating it like a controlled alarming substance. This is literature for young people. Okay, according to you. What do the parents think? You don't know, do you? That's right, because you've gone to university. My God, you have a PhD. I know what literature is for kids. But what do the parents think? Silence. Again, this is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you think this show has value, share it with your friends. Would you do that for me, please? Also, subscribe. I think our subscriptions are actually going up. I could be wrong, because it's hard to navigate all this stuff trying to find out whether subscriptions have gone up, but I think they have. Thank you. If you've subscribed to the broadcast, thank you very much for doing so. If you want to contribute, you can look down here at the little crawl on the bottom here. It says go to www.patreon.com. That's Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. If you care to support the show financially, by all means, please do so. Anything you can help us out with, even just $1 a month, would be marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. A Florida-based Christian school has informed everyone with students at their school, the parents of those kids, that LGBTQ identifying students will be asked to leave the school immediately. According to the email obtained by NBC News, the top administrator of Grace Christian School in Valrico, Florida, Barry McKean, sent the email to families for the kindergarten through grade 12 school on June 6th. He later confirmed and doubled down on the policy in an August 18th video on the school's official Facebook page. The June email read, "We believe that any form of homosexuality, lesbianism, bisexuality, transgender identity, lifestyle, self-identification, bestiality, incest, fornication, adultery, and pornography are sinful within the sight of God and the church. Students who are found participating in these lifestyles will be asked to leave the school immediately." According to the email, the school said students will be referred to by the gender on their birth certificate. No. The email titled "Important School Policy Point of Emphasis, Please Read" also emphasized, according to NBC News, a verse from the Bible, Genesis 1:26 through 28, as a means to condemn elective sex reassignment, transvestite, transgender, or non-binary gender fluid acts of conduct. Gender is defined as a social construct, whereas sex is defined by biological differences, according to the National Institutes of Health. Isn't that where Fauci used to work? Anyway, messages left by USA Today for Grace Christian School were not immediately returned. The school's policies are not new. The email reinforcing them is. Students were informed through the June email they must sign documents complying with the standards before students may enroll this month. In the August Facebook video, McKean said it is true a student cannot come to our school and be transgender or homosexual. It's rooted in scripture. We have these policies in our school since day one in the early 70s. Well, there you go. And once again, there's somebody out there trying to create problems, so they sent the thing to NBC News. And NBC News is trying to create problems by trying to inflame those people who believe that, gender is fluid. Yes, sex, on the other hand, that's a biological differences. But that's why we've redefined the terms. We used to have girl, boy, women, man, woman, man. Now we have persons with vulva and persons with badoobies. Anyway, whatever. And so I think it's good that a school stands up for its biblical ideologies. If you don't like those biblical ideologies, don't send your kid. See, it's simple. It's like that. Parents get a vote. See what's missing out of this conversation? The parents know nothing. They're just breeders. We, the government of the United States and elsewhere, we know what's important for your kids, and if you don't believe it, well, it's just because you're a rube. No, it's because I'm a dad, or it's because I'm a mom, or it's because, and by the way, I know which one I am. I'm just listing, Anyway, it's because I'm a dad, and it's because I'm a mom, and if I want to send my kids to a school where that stuff is missing, think about the extra time they're going to have to think about stuff that shouldn't be missing, like trying to figure out algebra or trying to do any number of other things. Okay? It's like where girls get to go compete with girls and guys get to go compete with guys athletically, stuff like that. And once again, it's nobody's business. And that NBC is trying to turn this into some sort of a mess tells you what you need to know about NBC. NBC, ABC, CBS. Yeah. All you guys, you need to pay attention. I'm going to have a little bit of a word with you regarding what's happening at CNN. Okay? It's coming later on the show. You need to be here for it. All right? Just explain a couple of different things, etc. Okay, so I can say vulva on the air, but not the male part. Right. That's true. That's true. Why? I don't know. Okay, I knew somebody was going to hit me in the face with that. All right, whatever. I mean, figuratively, not with. Just leave it right there. Just leave it alone. Just move on. Nothing to see here. Why? Because we all have clothes on. Well, at least I have clothes on. What you have on is your business. This is the Wells Report. Back in a minute. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Thank you. Yeah, you nailed me. Okay, fine. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I offer commentary, and then we debate everything I just talked about. The news, the analysis, the commentary, and we debate. By the way, the commentary is just my opinion. It is not the news. It is just as valuable as your opinion. So by all means, share yours. Won't you? I certainly hope you will. You can call us on the telephone, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. It's Monday. Still haven't quite warmed up yet, but we'll get there. So, by the way, if you like this broadcast, share it with your friends. Subscribe. Please subscribe. And once again, if you'd like to make a donation, go to Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. So we've been watching since June 8th. No, I think it was July 8th. June 8th. We've been watching the strangeness of the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. And we've been watching what's been going on with it. And we've been watching what moves have been made and what moves have been stopped. The moves that were made were, in most people's viewpoint, at some level, not real smart. It was a lot of people operating in a vacuum. And then there was a whole bunch of, caveats and re-explanations and just plain changes of course when it came to explanations for why that actually happened. And now we're in a situation where we come down to the affidavit which convinced federal magistrate Bruce Reinhart to approve the original raid or the original search of Mar-a-Lago. What was interesting on that is the President Trump came out and said, you know what, I want you to release the entire affidavit. And then the DOJ started backtracking. No, we want to protect our witnesses and we don't want to offer, quote, a roadmap into our investigations. More about that coming up in a moment. Bruce Reinhart, the magistrate, said, you know, I'm going to release part of this affidavit, at least parts of this affidavit. I want the DOJ to provide what they consider to be reasonable deletions of that document. And this is what happened today. He sent out a statement. Today, he admitted the FBI raid on former President's Mar-a-Lago home was unprecedented and formally rejected the Justice Department argument to keep the affidavit leading to the search under seal, citing intense public and historic interest. Reinhart, in a filing this morning, said he rejected the government's argument that the present record justifies keeping the entire affidavit under seal. Quote, the government argues that even requiring it to redact portions of the affidavit that could not reveal agent identities or investigative sources and methods imposes an undue burden on its resources and sets a precedent that could be disruptive and burdensome in future cases. I'll bet. You know, it's that Fourth Amendment. Yeah, that is so disruptive and so burdensome when it comes to police or police agencies trying to investigate someone. It's like you got to follow the rules. Those rules are so inconvenient. Yeah, but that's what makes America America. Reinhart continued, I do not need to reach the question whether in some cases these concerns could justify denying public access. They very well might. He added, particularly given the intense public and historic interest in an unprecedented search of a former president's residence, the government has not yet shown these administrative concerns are sufficient to justify the sealing. SEALING. Reinhart said he has given the Justice Department an opportunity to propose redactions, something he granted last week, saying that he needed those redactions by this Thursday at noon. Accordingly, it is hereby ordered that by the deadline, the government shall file under seal a submission addressing possible redactions and providing any additional evidence or legal argument that the government believes relevant to the pending motions to unseal. Reinhardt, during a highly anticipated hearing in the West Palm Beach Division of Florida last Thursday, said that the entire affidavit should not be kept under seal despite the Justice Department argument that the release could jeopardize future steps in the investigation and provide a roadmap for the probe. For crying out loud, provide it. Provide it. Provide all of it. Provide a roadmap for the entire investigation. Let's see it. Why should we see it? It's customary that these things are not seen. Well, I'm sure that's true. But we are not investigating somebody who runs a real estate agency down the road. We're investigating a former president of the United States. That's what we're doing. Should we investigate this former president of the United States? Maybe, maybe not. Right now, with all the other investigations on this guy, I'm leaning to probably not. We don't need to investigate Donald Trump. The people who need to investigate Donald Trump would be the media, except they don't know how to do that fairly because they are so absolutely enmeshed in the leftist progressive political machine that is currently at least attempting to run this country. They are so enmeshed in it that they just can't tear themselves away from the politics that led to all of these investigations, including the present one. And so what we have is this mess where with every obfuscation, with every evasion, the DOJ looks more and more and more corrupt. And that's bad for the American people. Don't worry about the roadmap to the future investigation. Don't worry about it. We do not prosecute based on ambushes. We prosecute based on violations, possible violations of the law. And if you believe you have possible violations of the law, put them out there. Chase them down. Do whatever it is that you do. Of course, that's a problem because the FBI, DOJ, DHS, CIA, NSA, IRS, all these other executive branch agencies have been playing politics for the last 10 years. So now they've got themselves a real problem. You see, if they had stuck to the law in the first place, then none of this would be an issue. You know, I got to be honest with you. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about politics in any way, shape, or form. But a nation of laws has a huge advantage over those nations who are not nations of laws. Everybody knows what the rule book is, and there are no exceptions for anybody based on politics. But exceptions have been made. Let's go all the way back to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's wide open server. Let's go all the way back to that. Let's go back to the 16 counts of TSSCI material on that server accessed by foreign intelligence services. Let's go all the way back to that. What if she is honestly prosecuted by the FBI? You see, the FBI was playing politics. If they weren't playing politics, we would not have heard about the wide open server or the violations of the Espionage Act before the election in 2016. It would have happened afterwards. But the FBI wanted to play politics. First, they jumped into it before they should have. And then they explained why they jumped into it before they should have. And that is the big problem. Do I have any problem with the FBI, say, for example, keeping information away from the American people? within 90 days of an election? Some. But in order to be able to do away with the 90-day rule, you first have to do away with the political interpretations of law. And if you're basing your determinations, if you're basing your investigations on politics instead of law, then if you do away with that 90-day rule, then the October surprise will be of a legal nature instead of simply a political one. And so, once again, they painted themselves into a corner here, and they've got a real problem. Because you simply cannot, and people were talking about how this, this, the differences between the allusion to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, it's apples and oranges, it's this and that. Well, no, it's not. The president has absolute protection regarding secret information. A Secretary of State does not, especially when that Secretary of State is a presidential candidate, especially when that Secretary of State invested campaign funds in creating a fake dossier, which was then followed up by a fake investigation into the fake dossier against President Trump during his entire presidency. Couple that with the machine politics of the mainstream media, 95% of all news articles against President Trump. And that's how you get to this mess. That's how you get to the point where we are right this very moment. If anybody had any stones whatsoever, in the FBI and the DOJ, they'd say, you know what, we're going to terminate these investigations. We're going to release the affidavit. We're going to terminate the investigations, and we're going to wait until there's something else that we need to discuss. But they don't have it. Because in order to do that, it would give absolute veracity to everything I just said. And they would rather look stupid and they'd rather look corrupt than to be honest and say, yeah, we screwed that up. In that, they need to look to Rachel Walensky from the CDC, who said, you know what? Yeah, we made mistakes. We screwed that up. That's what needs to happen next. Now, what about Bruce Reinhardt? What is he doing? I find it very interesting that he's acting this way. I mean, he is a creature of the Obama administration. So why is he simply not doubling down like everybody else in the Obama administration did when they got caught red-handed playing cop politics with the law? That's a very good question. But what do I say? Publish the whole thing. Go ahead, put the roadmap out there. Put the roadmap of the investigation out there. Let's find out what's going on. Because that is the way back. That's the way back to a nation of laws instead of a nation of degenerate pathological politics. That's my view. What's yours? Give me a call. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can find us on chat. Please do. It's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Check in, hang out, tell us what you think. So federal magistrate Bruce Reinhardt has told the DOJ that he rejected their explanation about why he couldn't release the affidavit. Asked the DOJ to provide redactions. They are due by noon this Thursday. What happens after that? Great question. According to Fox News, Reinhardt will then review those redactions and determine how best to proceed, whether to accept the recommendations from the government prosecutors or perform his own redactions instead. The judge also reminded the government or media, two parties to the suit, they can appeal his ruling if one or both object to his proposed redactions, which would remain under seal until a decision is made by a higher authority. Government prosecutor Jay Bratt last week argued that unsealing the affidavit would provide a roadmap of an ongoing investigation still in its early stages. Provide it. Provide a roadmap. Provide it. Give the entire roadmap to the mainstream media. Let them chase it down. Let them do some of that work. Stay out of the way. Do your own stuff. Do your own investigation. Let it lead where it leads. Because right now, the DOJ and the FBI look like they're trying to cover their tracks. That's cover-up. They need to stop. He went on to say, this is the government prosecutor, Jay Bratt. He said that the country's in a volatile state. He warned that releasing the names of witnesses or FBI agents would chill other witnesses who still may come forward. Fine. If these other witnesses are righteous in their beliefs and they are righteous in their knowledge, don't worry about it. They'll still come forward just like they always have. Just like they always have. This is not a precedent we want to set, said Jay Bratt. The government is very concerned about the safety of the witnesses in this case. Fine, redact their names. I don't agree with it, but redact their names. Go ahead and redact their names. That's what we call compromise. Redact their names, certainly redact their addresses, refer to them as FBI agent number 1 all the way through 400, or I'm sorry, it was just 31. Just do that. But leave the rest intact. Well, we're worried that maybe the testimony might expose who the witnesses actually were. Well, stop worrying about what might happen. Stop worrying about what might happen. Tell the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. Protect your witnesses, protect your agents, redact their names, if you must. If you must. But yeah, Jay Bratt doesn't want to set the precedent of actually having to be open and above board when it comes to investigating American citizens. He is, after all, a government lawyer. He's got to keep those. Those things intact so that we can run other people off the road if we have to. Media organizations argue the affidavit should be unsealed. The government and Reinhardt all agreed that this is a unique and unprecedented case. Charles Tobin, who argued for the Washington Post and other media organizations, said the raid on Mar-a-Lago was one of the most significant law enforcement actions in the nation's history, saying the public interest could not be greater. Correct. As I said, President Trump has demanded the affidavit be unsealed and released in an unredacted form. In the interest of transparency, I call for the immediate release of the completely unredacted affidavit pertaining to this investigation. There's more to this, and I'm going to share it with you. It's going to happen in just a couple of moments as we get through this 22nd day of August, year of our Lord 2022. My name is John David Wells. You are watching The Wells Report, more of which continues next. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks for being with us today. You may have heard that there was an active shooter situation in the place I used to hang out in Atlanta, Georgia. WSB TV television has reported that the suspect in the Midtown shooting case has been arrested. Now, we'll find out more as soon as it becomes available. But that ongoing breaking story, which, by the way, just came across the wires, is now apparently ended. Let's hope that's the case. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We've been talking about Judge Reinhardt and his idea that the affidavit surrounding the search of Mar-a-Lago should be at least partially released to the public. And this is what he said. He said, it's a foundational principle of American law that judicial proceedings should be open to the public. That's true. He said there was a significant likelihood that releasing the full affidavit could harm the safety of witnesses who helped the government's investigation. That's fine. Redact their names. I don't agree with it. Go ahead. Given the public notoriety and controversy about the search, it's likely that even witnesses who are not expressly named in the affidavit would be quickly and broadly identified over social media and other communication channels. That's the way it works. That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. There are whistleblower protections. There are laws protecting FBI agents and federal witnesses. It's time to see if those things work. And why don't we? Why don't we? Well, that goes back to some other decision making that happened a couple of years ago, when suddenly it was okay for people to run into the streets and do whatever they want to based on some perceived governmental misconduct. The leftist BLM riots span from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And police actions to stop them were stopped because these people need to blow off steam. So the people of the United States, seeing that, when they weren't happy with what was going on regarding the government, they decided to show up at the Capitol as the certification of the Electoral College votes was being taken in the House of Representatives. And so 15,000 people walked onto the Capitol Hill grounds because they made a mistake. They should have stayed behind the police barriers and just stood there. 800 or so were arrested. Some remain in solitary confinement to this day, still trying to figure out how that is and why they're not absolute, honest-to-goodness American political prisoners, because that's what it looks like to me. But had they stopped those riots, instead of allowing them to continue based on political calculations, well, you know, if there are riots from one end of the country to the other, maybe we'll be able to blame that on President Trump. Yeah. President Trump used the same rhetoric to stop the January 6th mess that people were using to sort of obfuscate responsibility for the BLM riots of the summer of 2020. And suddenly these very same people that made those very same statements are trying to hang President Trump out to dry because he obviously coerced the entire thing. No, he didn't. And none of this would make it through a court of law, which is why it's not in a court of law. See, if it wasn't a court of law, all this would be dispensed with. And strangely enough, the only person that looks like he's trying to put the lid back on the genie's lamp happens to be the guy that had a significant role in actually opening it in the first place. That's federal magistrate Bruce Reinhardt. And he is the one that says, hey, you know what? This is different. Public notoriety, controversy. We have to open up the doors of this investigation. They should. I don't want anybody getting hurt. I don't want anybody to have a problem with it. But he says it himself. A foundational principle of American law is that judicial proceedings should be open to the public. That is true. That is absolutely true. And I think I mused a couple of minutes ago, or a little while ago, why was Bruce Reinhardt doing this? Well, I think that's answered when he said, The people that are asking for the complete release of the affidavit are perfectly welcome to appeal whatever ruling he makes regarding the government's redactions of the affidavit or his own redactions of the affidavit. And basically, I think what he's trying to do, strangely enough, and I could be wrong, is balance the scales of justice before this gets dropped into the lap of what I believe is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. What he's trying to do is he's trying to build a fair understanding of what's been going on so that it can be moved forward, because that's clearly going to happen. If these redactions are too draconian, thanks to the DOJ, the mainstream media, and perhaps even Donald Trump himself, will then request an appeal moving forward. And that would be fine. And let that process work. So I don't know whether that's his idea, but that makes sense. Reinhardt also expressed concerns about revealing the identity of the FBI agent who swore to the affidavit. Well, you see, that's just a little bit of a problem right there. Because we didn't know until the New York Times published it that an FBI agent swore to the affidavit, particularly when there have been increased threats against FBI personnel since the surge. Well, there are other things too. There have been an awful lot of FBI agents swearing in front of an awful lot of federal courts, including the FISA court, of what's real and what's not. And we found out that what they swore to was not real. Days after the search of Mar-a-Lago, an armed man attacked the FBI Cincinnati field office and died in a shootout with local police. He made an egregious error, unless, of course, that was his intent. If his intent was to give oxygen to an FBI idea that we have to keep this all very hush-hush and very much behind closed doors, if he was trying to do something about that, he totally screwed up, because all that did was reinforce that very ideology. A Pennsylvania man was arrested after posting messages online threatening the FBI, including at least one that directly mentioned the attack outside Cincinnati. Again, don't do it. Do not succumb. Don't get drawn into the fight. Do not succumb to the bait. Now, this is the same FBI who kept everything undercover and so on, and tried to play politics by destroying President Trump with the Mueller investigation. Again, the Mueller investigation gets to the end and says, nope, we can't find any collusion, but we won't exonerate him either. Well, that has nothing to do with anything. Either you find it or you don't. If you didn't find it, you didn't find it. I want this out in the open. This is where the FBI pays for playing games. This is where the games come back to haunt them, which is why the FBI moving forward has got to be an objective, fair, honest broker of investigative information for the sake of the United States of America, not for the political ideologies of the Democrat Party or the Republican Party, for that matter. Whoever runs the FBI as soon as Christopher Wray gets either fired or quits had better figure out a way to return the FBI to being something besides the enforcement arm of the Democrat National Committee. And this would go a long way to make that happen. I'm very, very sure that a lot of what's in the affidavit is going to give lie to everything we've heard about the Mar-a-Lago raid in the first place, up to and including the idea or the information that led to a finding of probable cause by guess who? Federal Magistrate Bruce Reinhardt. In the first place, people are going to go, oh my goodness. There are going to be an awful lot of red faces and an awful lot of egg on their faces, including possibly President Trump. But you know what? Egg on faces looks a lot better than ulterior corruption, doesn't it? We've gotten down to the point, we've gotten to a breaking point where federal law enforcement has to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. I want the FBI back. I don't want this political enforcement arm of the federal government to be able to stomp on anybody they feel like without actually doing it the way it's supposed to be done, according to the Constitution, not FBI policy, according to the Bill of Rights, not DOJ standard operating procedures. The Constitution of the United States doesn't make any kind of protections for any of the things that these guys are claiming in federal court. They just don't. This is also something else. So now we know, thanks to what is probably sloppy writing by the FBI, by the New York Times, when Judge Reinhardt expressed concern about revealing the identity of the FBI agent who swore to the affidavit. We didn't know that an FBI agent swore to the affidavit. And if the FBI agent swore to the affidavit, how did he know about any of it in the first place? That was August 8th, by the way, when this thing came down. They got together in June. Was that one of the FBI agents who said, hey, there's stuff down there, we have to do this? Probably. But then there's something else that's intriguing about all of this. He was a little bit concerned about the disclosure of some of the details in the affidavit might affect the Secret Service's ability to carry out its protective function. Remember what I said? I said that somebody testifying against President Trump in this affidavit leading to this search was very likely a Secret Service agent. Why would they put that in there if there wasn't a Secret Service agent involved? At least one. And yeah, when a Secret Service agent becomes a government witness, that's a real problem. That will change the Secret Service. But as I said a couple of weeks ago, I said to the list of deep state agencies, it looks like we have to add the Secret Service to it as well. The judge wrote that he's inclined to release at least parts of the affidavit until he receives the government's proposed redactions, particularly given the intense public and historic interest in the unprecedented search of a former president's residence. The government has not yet shown that these administrative concerns are sufficient to justify the document remaining under seal. I suspect what's going to happen is Judge Reinhardt's going to reject the proposed redactions by the Justice Department. He's going to make his own. He's going to present it to the Justice Department and the other side. They will either accept or reject those redactions, and it'll end up in a circuit court of appeals. That's the way I think that's going to happen. That's probably an important part of this, and probably something that ought to be exactly the way it should be handled. But this all gets back to things that I've been saying for years on this broadcast. American politics cannot be driven in a sociopathic way away from connections to reality and American law. The January 6th committee, using the trappings of American law, but the unfair slander of American politics and trying to have it both ways. Can't do it. Can't do it. And once again, look, if it's a political exercise, say so. But the Hollywood-inspired melodrama of the committee members walking in all together, somber, serious, sober. That's what the Supreme Court of the United States does. Once again, trying to use the trappings of the American justice system. Politics before reality is always disastrous. secretive investigations of questionable merit always leads to corruption. Always. It also leads to the FBI not being called the FBI, but being called the secret police. It leads us to a presidential administration being referred to as a regime, because that's the way regimes work. So all of this comes together. All of this has been, and I've been talking about it for years, right down to the crazy linkage of the media and the Democrat Party. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So remember those guys that were going to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer? Remember the 4 guys that ended up in a trial for their lives when the entire case blew up against the FBI? 2 of the guys were acquitted outright. The other 2, the jury could not agree, and there was a mistrial declared. Well, there's another trial going on, and jurors just heard closing arguments in that trial. Trials for conspiracy and attempted kidnapping. They heard their closing arguments today. The government is trying for a second time to secure convictions in this alleged plot to trigger a revolution in 2020. Right. After a 9-day trial, Assistant U.S. Attorney Nils Kessler repeatedly urged jurors to focus on what Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. were saying in the months before the FBI placed undercover agents and informants inside the group that summer. These defendants were outside a woman's house in the middle of the night with night vision goggles and guns and a plan to kidnap her. And they made a real bomb. That's far enough. That's far enough, isn't it? Well, if you're trying to try them on bomb making charges, probably. Yeah, that's probable. But that's not what you're trying them for, is it? During the second trial, the jury heard secretly recorded conversations and read violent social media posts. 2 undercover agents and an informant testified for hours, explaining the men trained in Washington and Michigan, make that Wisconsin and Michigan, and visited Elk Rapids to see Whitmer's home and a nearby bridge that could be blown up. Which governor is going to be dragged off and hung for treason first, said Kessler, quoting Croft's own words. Any governor would do, said Kessler. By the end of June, he was telling people Michigan's government is a target of opportunity, and God knows the governor needs to be hung. He didn't just want to kidnap her, he wanted to have his own trial and execute her. I talked about that on the Wells Report. On the other hand, then there's this. Defense lawyers have portrayed Fox and Croft as big talkers, bumbling, foul-mouthed, marijuana-smoking guys exercising free speech, and incapable of leading anything as extraordinary as an abduction of a public official. They say FBI agents and informants fed their outrage and pulled them into the web. In America, the FBI is not supposed to create domestic terrorists so that the FBI can arrest them. The FBI is not supposed to create a conspiracy so the FBI can stand up and claim a conspiracy. Gibbons said there was fantastical talk from Fox and others about storming Mackinac Island, getting helicopters and boats, and maybe escaping through the St. Lawrence Seaway. Sure. None of those guys ever heard about Coast Guard cutters? He said Fox was isolated, broke, and homeless, living in the basement of a vacuum store. Somebody really cool showing him attention and wants to be his friend, said Gibbons of Chapel, which was the FBI informant in this case. Croft's attorney, Joshua Blanchard, offered a similar assessment and a scathing attack on the FBI techniques. He reminded the jury that 2 more informants with recording devices were in the group, were never called as government witnesses, including a woman who shared a hotel room with Croft and traveled with him from the East Coast. You don't have to agree with Barry's politics. I certainly don't, said Blanchard, but we should all agree the principles of truth and justice are the foundation that our country is built upon. The FBI has told us truth doesn't matter to them. You have to have the power to put a stop to that today. We will see. We will see. But it all leads back to the very real notion that the FBI is arguably in a very bad spot right now. A very bad spot. Why the government continued to pursue this case, I have no idea. A lot of federal cases end up in a hung jury or a mistrial, and they are never heard from again. Never heard from again. And why they decided to pursue this, I have no idea. I would expect that if indeed there is another hung jury, another mistrial, that'll be that. If indeed they're convicted, there's going to be an appeal. And that appeal is going to be painful for the government of the United States. And once again, how can a jury say, these guys they're just boobs. They're just silly guys. When that's the exact defense that James Comey used against Hillary Clinton. See, all of this stuff comes back to haunt when all you really have to do is just enforce the law. Everybody has access to the U.S. Code. Everybody has access to somebody that can help you understand the language. Everybody has access to that. But if you start playing, well, we'll prosecute this law for that person, but not prosecute that law for that person, before you know it, you're buried up to your neck in contradictory decision making. And it does affect lots more than just your politics. This is the Wells Report. Hang in there. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Just like that, hour 2 in the books. Thanks very much for being with us. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. And then we debate. Why? Well, because certainly the news is debatable. The facts are debatable. The bias is, okay, obvious, but still debatable. And absolutely the commentaries are debatable. So debate. Join us. You can find us on a rollicking chat room. Lots of people hang out on the chat room, and you can too. Go to Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Twitch and drop by and tell us what you think. That would be awesome. You can also call me on the telephone, on that telephone right there. Operator is standing by, me. And what we'll do is we'll take your phone call. Here's the telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I got to admit, this kind of sort of got me a little steamed over the weekend. It came out that President Biden's administration is reportedly pushing toward talks to release billions of dollars in frozen assets to Afghanistan, despite the Taliban's refusal to cooperate. Yeah, this is what happens when you play around with terrorists. This is what happens. When you start playing around with terrorists, you know, the rules keep changing. Isn't it strange? It's almost like American politics. This from Fox News. The U.S. and other nations froze billions of dollars worth of foreign-held assets belonging to the now defunct Afghanistan government after the Taliban took over the country in 2021. The Biden administration continues to work with Taliban officials despite the terrorist organization's housing of a top al-Qaeda leader in Kabul, according to Reuters. The Biden administration and the United Nations are working to release the funds in an effort to stabilize the Afghan economy, which has all but collapsed under Taliban rule and Western sanctions. Humanitarian organizations have warned the Afghan people may face hunger in the impending winter. The U.S. seeks to avoid sending funds directly to the Taliban by setting up a Swiss trust fund that would hold control over the funds and distribute them for humanitarian needs. Nonprofits warned earlier this year that much of the U.S. aid to Afghanistan was going directly to the Taliban, which is where this money is going to go, whether it goes through the Swiss or not. The renewed push to give the funding to Afghanistan comes weeks after a U.S. drone strike killed a top al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri, in Kabul. The Taliban has denied knowledge that al-Zawahiri was sheltering in the city. Then why did we kill him there, Mr. Taliban? Jeez. The al-Qaeda chief was inside a home owned by an aide to Sirajuddin Haqqani, the top deputy of the Taliban supreme leader, Mullah Hibatullah Akhundzada. Yeah, Akhundzada. He had been reportedly in the house for months at the time of the strike, but he wasn't actually there. Just ask the Taliban. The U.S. drone strike hit al-Zawahiri as he stepped out on the house balcony on August 1st. Taliban leaders initially condemned the strike as an infringement of the Doha Agreement between the Islamic terrorist organization and the U.S. Well, if you don't pay attention to our agreements, why should we? Yeah, it's that duplicity thing. Drives us all crazy. It also, by the way, violated, according to the Taliban, the agreement that stipulated that the Taliban would not allow al-Qaeda or terror groups to shelter in Afghanistan. Well, the only problem with that is that there was a bombing in that very same city that was authored by ISIS, who hates the Taliban. Why? Because the Taliban is competing with ISIS and vice versa for terror control of Afghanistan. And the Biden administration, in the, shall we say, not helpful tradition of Obama-era politics, is trying to give back money to a demonstrated terror country. Because why? Well, because, they want to be good guys. To whom? To the worst guys on the planet? But John David, people are going to starve. Yeah, just like they've been doing in Afghanistan for centuries. Yeah, they are. And somewhere at some point, somebody needs to hold these socialist totalitarian governments accountable for their actions. The first thing a government has to be able to do is has to be able to make sure that their people can eat. Otherwise, who's going to empty the garbage being generated by the government at hand? If they can't do that, then what they need to do is they need to help, but they don't want to help. What they want to do is they want to run roughshod over anybody, including their own citizenry, for the sake of their holy mission. Which, by the way, is something that I was talking about last hour on the Wells Report, which is suspending belief in American law in the sake of the holy mission of leftist politics. It's not so different. It's not so different. The only difference is really that so far, we don't see government workers going out and killing women for what they're wearing on the street. I certainly hope it doesn't ever happen in this country, but I have no idea what's going on with these people, and neither do you. I don't even think these people know what they're doing here in the United States of America, but what they are doing is screwing it up like art, and they need to stop. So do the Taliban, but will giving them back their frozen assets that apparently they don't want, is that going to do it? I do have one thing to say that is, I suppose, exculpatory in this particular case to the Biden administration. Being a creature of Obama-era politics, at least the Biden administration isn't thinking about essentially changing all those assets into hard currency and flying it to a clandestine airport somewhere in Afghanistan and offloading pallets and pallets and pallets of cash. But I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in any kind of supposed legitimacy being extended to Afghanistan through the Swiss. The Swiss is going to be just like every other Western country that tries to do business with people who have a completely different ethical understanding. The Taliban isn't stupid. They'll send representatives and people to go negotiate with the Swiss, and they'll tell them it's absolutely horrible and terrible and rotten, and the Swiss will let go of some of the frozen assets, and it will land in the country of Afghanistan to immediately be taken into custody by the Taliban, who will very likely do nothing more than enrich themselves, and their people will still starve. That's the way these governments work. That's not my opinion. That's the news. It's how these governments work. We've seen it time and time and time again. And you're saying, my gosh, John David, you're just jingoistic and xenophobic, and you're just an ugly American. Okay. I've got another solution. Because I think about stuff like this. Got another solution. First of all, if you don't want the money, sign this piece of paper saying you don't want the money, we'll keep it. That's thing number one. Especially since you have all of our military equipment and so on and so forth, and you got all that for free because we bailed on Afghanistan and all of our obligations to the country itself, and of course to our allies that spent 20 years fighting with us. We'll just keep the money. And you can have the military equipment. Really tough for your people to eat a Humvee, but I'm sure that if they get hungry enough, they'll certainly try. Or you can sell us back our military equipment, let's say 20 cents on the dollar. And for every piece of military equipment that shows up in the United States, we'll pay you for it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what we'll do. What does that work out to? $1,500 for each Humvee? Perfect. Hey, you get $100,000 for a helicopter. There you go. We get our equipment back, and you get some of your money back. How about that? That's what we ought to do. Hell, we'll even make you a package deal. We'll even make you a package deal. Give us everything we left there, and we'll give you 20% of what you left here. That's a lot easier to do. Well, gosh, John David, how are they? I mean, the country's landlocked. How are you going to do it? Not our problem. Taliban wants the money? Let them earn it. And even that may be heartless and cold and terrible. My gosh, John David, you sound heartless, cold, and terrible here. There are little kids starving in Afghanistan. Yes, there are. And there always have been. And there always will be until you break the stranglehold of silliness that masquerades as a government in Afghanistan. But that's gone on for centuries, if not millennia. The biggest, toughest redneck on the block runs the show. Anybody steps up to challenge that particular person, they get killed. Pretty soon, the only persons left are the biggest, toughest rednecks and all of his buddies. And for all intents and purposes, that's exactly what the Taliban is doing. So go ahead. Cry, whine, do whatever it is that you want to do. Say that people aren't playing fair. Well, okay, first thing first, you got to let your daughters go to school and you got to stop killing women who don't dress according to your particular whim of the day. And oh, by the way, as soon as you start killing women again, we're going to stop giving you money again. But go ahead and start packing up all those Humvees and sending them back to us, all those helicopters, et cetera, et cetera. And this offer is going to expire very, very soon. And oh, by the way, if I was administrating the funds, the 20% of the military material that we left there, what I would do is I wouldn't send them money. I would send them food. I would send them medical supplies. That's what I would do. I wouldn't send them cash. Because they don't handle cash well. They just don't. So don't give it to them. At some point, and this is the Biden administration doing this, at some point the Biden administration has to and all these other Obama era politicos need to stop bending over for these people and playing their ridiculous game. It didn't work in Iran. It didn't work in Afghanistan the first time, the second time, or the third time. So what are we doing? They're worried about us being fair. Well, show us how you can be fair, and maybe what we'll do is we'll start playing ball. But we got to see it before we do a thing. And I hope that that's what the Biden administration decides. But why is it that I just don't think it's going to happen? This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. While we're talking about Afghanistan, Matt Zeller is the co-founder of something called No One Left Behind. It is a nonprofit dedicated to help U.S. interpreters and employees in Iraq and Afghanistan get away from the repressive regimes that we left in place. It was a mess when the Afghanistan war ended. Matt Zeller worked as hard as he possibly could to get as many people out as possible. He served in Afghanistan in 2008 as an embedded combat advisor. Since his time in the Army, he's become an advocate for current and former service members and is the author of Watches Without Time, An American Soldier in Afghanistan. That, by the way, refers to an Afghan saying, "The Americans have all the watches, but we have all the time." When asked about where he stood from, say, for example, a year ago when all this happened, he said, "I'm in the exact same place I was when I was I was in the exact same place where I was a year ago. Forgive me," he told Business Insider, "no offense, but while you and pretty much everybody else went on with your life, those of us who have been trying to get these people out have been living this as our daily existence for the last year." He's an advisory board chairman for the Association of Wartime Allies, an organization that aids refugees and allies. Hasn't been able to get a single person out of Afghanistan in the past year. Well, in that he has something in common with the Biden administration. We still can't get Americans out of Afghanistan either. He went on to say, "It was nice that you're checking in because, the calendar now says it's been over a year. Nice of you to check in on the anniversary, but this is an ongoing mission. U.S. evacuated 124,000 individuals during the withdrawal. Since then, the Biden administration has evacuated 800 American citizens from the country. How many more are left? Well, the Biden administration won't say. Oh. We know they're there. Supposedly, the consulate there is in contact with Americans, but we can't put a number on it. We've never been able to put a number on it. Why is that? Well, because we're trying to evade responsibility and accountability. That's why. Oh, okay. Great. We have to stop that too. The New York Times reported last year thousands of Afghan nationals who helped the government throughout the 20-year war are seeking refuge. President Biden has called the pullout an extraordinary success. Is that what you call it? He's faced heavy criticism from the withdrawal from members of both sides of the aisle. Zeller said, "The guy at the very top seems to have washed his hands of the whole situation, wants to move on from something that happened last year, and it's a shame. Helping people stuck in Afghanistan would require this administration to actually care." Those are hard words to hear. Hard words to hear. Why aren't we doing better? I don't know. I don't have any idea. But we're not doing better. And we should be doing better. Why aren't we? Well, your guess is as good as mine. But I think it does get back to what I've been saying. Politics before reality. Politics before what's right. It's an ugly happenstance. Maybe even unforgivable. And so maybe what we do is we don't forgive. Maybe what we do is we hold accountable. The election's in 80 days. 81, actually. So we'll see. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. If you like this broadcast, share it with your friends. Subscribe. 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 Tell your friends to subscribe. Hit like. Like the show. We'd like you to like the show, so please do. And if you want to support the show, go to Patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report, and you can support the show as you see fit. I sincerely appreciate it. So, my annoyance has a political cause. Okay? I hate politics. The more I talk about politics, the angrier I get, because politics is degenerate. Politics does not work for the benefit of the people. It works for the benefit of politics. It's a self-licking ice cream cone. And I'm tired of it. Are you? A17-379-2172. By all means, let me know. A17-379-2172. Let me give you a couple of different things that I saw today that really drives me crazy. Actually, there are three. Several top Democrats and the White House remain silent regarding the Inflation Reduction Act, extolled as a brilliant way to reduce inflation in our time. Except it's not going to work. As an inflation reduction, it doesn't even do anything for the reduction of inflation for a year or two. And so all of us were scratching our head going, hey, why do they call it the Inflation Reduction Act? They could have called it Strawberry Wine, except that that's a much better song. It doesn't reduce inflation, so what does it do? Well, it funds the Green New Deal. As a matter of fact, that's what President Biden talked about when he was doing the signing ceremony. He talked about how this is the first meaningful act by any administration to reduce the horrors of climate change. Oh, so it's a climate bill. And so everybody's looking at this, rolling their eyes, going, this is why everybody in the world hates Washington, D.C. Everybody. Well, there are like 11% that can find something good about the current political situation in Washington. But that leaves 89%. Even with my shaky math, I can figure that out. So several top Democrats and the White House silent about what the Inflation Reduction Act will do. Somebody asked, how's it going to reduce inflation? Mumbo jumbo. So if it's a climate bill, let me ask you about that. Democrats, including President Biden, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and then Senator Joe Manchin have loudly applauded the Inflation Reduction Act in recent weeks for its billion-dollar investment in green energy, saying the bill would have a significant impact on carbon emissions and global warming. Biden signed the legislation into law last week, $739 billion worth. Just what we need, more government spending. $3.1 trillion in debt already, and they're spending money like it's theirs, except they would never spend their money like that. No, while they're spending our money to get rid of the horrors of climate change and the rising oceans, all these people that are foisting this on us are buying beachfront property. Why? Is it because they're just closet scuba divers? Or is it because they realize that it's all garbage? So, the bill has a muted impact on climate change, according to analysis by climate expert Bjorn Lomborg, a former Danish government environmental official and president of the think tank Copenhagen Consensus. Nice alliteration. Lomborg concluded the Inflation Reduction Act would reduce the average global temperature by about 0.016 degrees Celsius over the next 80 years. That's the best case scenario. In the worst case, the bill would lower temperatures by 0.0005 degrees. In other words, it's useless. And of course, the United Nations, they have their ideas. They believe that there will be cataclysmic impacts on civilization if the temperature rises 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That's what we need to do. We all need to go back to pre-industrial levels. Say goodbye to your toaster and your house and your wardrobe. Wouldn't we all look better in those really cool, those fringy, like buckskin jackets? Wouldn't we all look really cool in those? And those buckskin loincloths? It's really, really funny. People recoil in horror at the idea of people like me wandering around in a Speedo. But apparently they want us to walk around in animal skins. This is so stupid. I can't believe it. None of those guys have any kind of comment when asked, what is the projected effect of the bill on climate change? House Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman Frank Pallone, the Democrat from New Jersey, Senators Martin Heinrich, the Democrat from New Mexico, Brian Schatz, the Democrat from Hawaii, Chris Murphy, the Democrat from Connecticut, Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democrat from Rhode Island, were contacted for comment. All lawmakers that were major proponents of the legislation's climate provisions. This is the biggest step forward on climate ever, and it's going to allow us to boldly take additional steps toward meeting all of my climate goals. All of my climate goals. The one we set out when we ran, said President Biden. So in other words, you're using billions upon billions of American taxpayer dollars for your climate goals. Then he hammered on Republicans for voting against tackling the climate crisis. Well, wait a minute, it's the Inflation Reduction Act. Why aren't we tackling inflation? And now nobody's saying anything about what it's going to do as a climate bill. Pallone said we simply can't wait any longer to confront the climate crisis. Oh, yeah, we can. The Inflation Reduction Act tackles the climate crisis and protects our communities from its devastating impacts. My God, did you understand that the last, month or so, it's been 100 degrees in Texas? Yes, I live here. It has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with the fact it's Texas in the summertime. By the way, it's been raining for 3 days. Man, it was it was really, really nice to enjoy that cool, rain-soaked air. It really has been nice. Schumer said the bill would deliver climate justice. Climate justice? Pelosi said it saves the planet while keeping more money in your pockets. Was she talking with her Democrat buddies? Yeah, what it does is it saves the planet and it keeps more money in your pockets. Sure it does. Lomberg conducted, that's the Danish climate expert, conducted his analysis using a study from the independent research firm Rhodium Group, which calculated the expected carbon emissions from the Inflation Reduction Act. He then inserted the figures into a United Nations climate model, converting emissions reductions into temperature reductions, and could not find any. 0.0005%. Yeah, that annoyed me. I mean, it annoyed me bad. And then there's this cascading gobbledygook from the government of the people, the GOP, is now creating another problem. Republicans are looking at the 2022 election and realizing, oh my God, people might put us back in power. What will we do? Nothing. Mitch McConnell says, well, I'm really worried about getting control of the Senate because I'm incompetent and can't get, the quality of the candidates for the Senate just aren't there. None of your business. The people of the United States pick the Senate candidates, Mr. McConnell. And I certainly hope he's Mr. McConnell very soon, because that guy needs to retire. But he's carping about the quality of the candidates. It's none of your business. Get out there and get control of the Senate. Well, if we get control of the Senate, then I have to explain why we're doing nothing. And that's hard. Yeah, it's hard. So step away from the leadership role and put somebody in there that has answers. But can they do that? I don't think so. I just don't think so. So Fox News is out with their power rankings. The GOP House majority is shrinking. Democrats are scoring key victories. And the polling, well, it leads to a smaller than expected House win. Republicans are expected to win the House, but on a slimmer margin than previously forecast, while neither party can yet claim a majority in the Senate. In this edition of the Power Rankings, GOP suffers a net loss of 6 seats in the House as polling improves for the Democrats. Yeah, except that the polling is skewed. Always has been. And instead of the Republican Party standing up and saying the power rankings are bunk, instead of working for these candidates running, they're saying, well, we just might not be as successful as we thought we were going to be. Yeah, that's because if you actually get power, you'll actually be expected to do something with it, and you actually don't whenever it's happened in the past. I tweeted on this. I've been tweeting on this for the past several days, which, by the way, is at the Wells Report, common spelling. So I tweeted about it, and I said, first of all, the way this works is this. If you don't take control of the situation, if you don't work to start getting these candidates elected, the conservative population of the United States is going to sweep past you like you're tied to a stump. And you know why? It's because the Republican Party is tied to a stump. It's not the right party any longer. Arguably, it hasn't been the right party forever. I talked with Newt Gingrich. And he said the Republican Party is not a conservative party. It most certainly is not. It's not a Republican Party. It's not a conservative party. They held Ronald Reagan at arm's length. They wouldn't touch Donald Trump with a 10-foot pole. And they tried to sabotage his entire administration. And now they're trying to sabotage, or at least stand by and do nothing, while other people try to sabotage a possible second run by this man. Somehow believing that Donald Trump is absolutely going to win in 2024. Well, that's not in the bag. But this is the Republican Party doing their absolute dead level best to evade the responsibility that they are assuring us we should give them. And that truly frosts my cookies. And then there's this. A new conservative group gets $1.6 billion in donations to spend beyond the midterms and beyond. A conservative nonprofit poised to spend during the upcoming 2022 midterms and beyond received a record donation of $1.6 billion last year. The group is called the Marble Freedom Trust, captained by Leonard Leo, a conservative strategist known for his leadership of the Federalist Society and work in causes related to abortion and Supreme Court nominations. The donation came from Barry Said, an electronics manufacturing mogul. The donation is one of the largest single contributions ever made to a politically focused nonprofit, according to the New York Times, which first reported the news. And everybody's saying, my gosh, great. Conservatism got $1.6 billion from one guy. It's called dark money for a reason. It's just as ridiculous that George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, can throw hundreds of millions of dollars into Democrat causes. It's just as ridiculous for Barry said to throw $1.6 billion at Republican causes. Here's the new deal. Political contributions can only come from individual citizens. They can only donate $85,000 max per year. All this money comes with a price. And as we've seen, it's an anti-American price, isn't it? Certainly not a pro-American citizen response. Dark money is dark money. It's all bad. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being with us today. This gesture that you currently see on camera is me holding my telephone in my hand. What does that mean? Well, it means breaking news. Fox News is reporting that former President Trump today filed a motion seeking an independent review of the documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago estate during the FBI raid earlier this month. Per his motion, his legal team is seeking an order that appoints a special master and joins further review of seized materials by the government. Until a special master is appointed, requires the government to provide a more detailed receipt for property and requires the government to return any item seized that was not within the scope of the search warrant. This, by the way, is just an opening salvo here. See that last paragraph? requires the government to return any item seized that was not within the scope of the search warrant. Yeah, the scope of the search warrant was far too broad. What's going to end up happening with that is that that's going to be determined that the search warrant was too broad, which is why the special master has to be appointed to determine what of those materials is covered by the intent of the search warrant, which is going to cast aspersions on the search warrant, which makes the release of the originating affidavit even more important and even more relevant. Okay. Trump indicated last week he would file a major motion pertaining to the Fourth Amendment concerning the illegal break-in of his home. My rights, together with the rights of all Americans, have been violated at a level rarely seen before in our country, like never. The search of the Mar-a-Lago Club earlier this month to receive documents from his White House years was an unprecedented law enforcement action against a former president who is widely expected to run for office once again. Officials have not revealed exactly what was contained in the boxes. The FBI said it recovered 11 sets of classified records, including some marked sensitive compartmented information, a special category meant to protect secrets that would cause exceptionally grave damage to the U.S. interests. By the way, the Associated Press is also involved in this. So, once again, the former president is getting serious. But remember, this is just the opening move. This is going to get ugly. This is truly going to get ugly. Like I've said before, buckle your seatbelts. Finally, on the Wells Report today, CNN has shown itself to be willing to change. And I am very interested in that change. Brian Stelter was let go last week after the cancellation of reliable sources. What was interesting, and I didn't know, was that Brian Stelter signed a new contract last year. CNN is simply buying him out of it. So an insider for CNN said it's interesting they're buying out contracts with so much time left on them. They're not waiting. They're eating it because they want changes. They're not going to wait out deals. Most deals were done in the Zucker regimes last year. Jeff Zucker, who also lost his job. So this shows time on contract isn't going to get in their way if they want change. The CNN spokesperson confirmed last week that Christopher Licht, who is the new CEO, was tasked with running the company earlier this year. A merger put the network under control of Warner Brothers Discovery. Chris Licht had told team members on a morning editorial call that more changes were on the way. Quote, "There will be more changes. You might not understand or like it all," Licht told his staffers. "Give us some time, see how things develop," unquote. The insider added more contributor cuts are likely forthcoming. The moves have caused consternation within the network that's already dealt with more than its share of upheaval over the past year. Well, this is what happens when you start playing politics with a news organization. People get canned. And that's what's happening here. They're making changes that always causes anxiety, and boy, can I vouch for that. Been through this kind of stuff hundreds of times. Well, not hundreds. Many times. It's always bad. Since last summer, Chris Cuomo was fired. Jeff Zucker forced to resign. CNN Plus was blown out of the water. Now longtime legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin is gone. While he announced he was departing of his own volition, he was effectively pushed out, according to sources. I'm not going to say it, so stop waiting. The network shakeup comes after Liberty Media chairman John Malone, who sat on the Discovery Communications Incorporated board of directors prior to the merger and is now an influential Warner Brothers Discovery board member, appeared on CNBC last November and made comments about the future of CNN. "I'd like to see CNN evolve back into the kind of journalism it started with and actually have journalists, which would be unique and refreshing." Many industry insiders took this as a sign that CNN's new manager would shed liberal pundits that rose to fame under Zucker. But Malone recently denied that he was directly responsible for terminating Stelter. An Axios report earlier this year name-dropped him and left-wing anchor Jim Acosta as two of the liberal hosts seen by conservatives as the face of the network's Zucker-era partisan shift. Well, there's always Jake Tapper. There's Wolf Blitzer, who should have known better. Yeah. So CNN is changing. I hope it's changing for the better. And for the sake of America, I think you should too. This has been the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. I hope you had a good time and I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Subscribe. See you tomorrow. And just like that, here we go. Yeah, it's not just a regular master, it's a special master. And of course, there's going to be a lot of alcohol involved, so it'll probably be a mix master. Okay, come on, that was good. That was funny. Now say so, please. Let's see. I was very decent to who last week? Are you talking about McConnell? Yeah, well, he drives me crazy. Oh, Don Lemon. Yep, Don Lemon. All right, my friends, I'm going to wander on off. I'm going to head on out the dough, and I want you to be very, very safe. And I want to see you tomorrow, okay? Once again, subscribe if you haven't. Donate if you'd like.